So I'd like to welcome you all and to say how excited I am to be part of this session. I actually applied as a delegate, but then I thought I'd better do a little bit of work to validate my presence. So I'm a member of the Validate management team, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this workshop. It's about ECRs being able to understand and navigate the bio-entrepreneurial landscape. It doesn't need to be ECRs, but I think it's for you guys to be excited and to take all of the knowledge and all of the expertise and all of everything that's wonderful about Professor Petro Terblanche. She's here with us today. She's given her time. She's the CEO of Afrigen Biologics, a leading mRNA vaccine development producer in LMIC countries. She is a Validate investigator, part of the Validate team. Very strong record in clinical oncology and environmental health research. She's experienced in technology transfer and licensing agreements and biotech startup ventures. If you know what those words mean, you're already ahead of the game. But I think we all need to know not what the words mean, but then how to deliver those activities. She's been instrumental in implementing South Africa's national biotechnology strategy, and she's a recognized leader in translating research into innovation, particularly in the life sciences and the health sector. And that's something we should all aspire to. She's passionate about strengthening global health through industry academic partnerships. And it's taken me 60 years to get to that point, but she's got there before me. And I think we're going to have an outstanding talk. So I'd like to give the floor to Petra, and just actually say one more thing. For those of you we're going to have a pitch session. The winner of the pitch session is getting 6 months of mentoring from Professor Terblanche. And so that's an outstanding driver to get us really ready to start making the difference and getting research into innovation. Petra, please go ahead.
Andrea, thank you for a kind invitation. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to those who have joined, and to Validate, thank you. We've, since 2022, when we started working with Validate, we've just had incredible value addition from Validate, and thank you for inviting me. And Blakely, thank you for all the organizing and working with us. I am going to share some slides. I hope that the participants will find it interesting. It's an interesting topic that one could really spend days and months and years on. But I've tried to, in a few slides, share with you some interesting facts, and also hope that I can guide and add some value to what your career aspirations are. So we're going to do about 20 minutes presentation and then open for question and answers. And then we have the fun session with our 3 facilitators to guide you through a pitching exercise. So for today, validators asked me, this is part of the how-to series, as you probably know, and this is part of building the knowledge base and the capacity of our scientists across the world, and particularly in low middle income countries. So in the scope of today is I'm going to share with you the journey of Afrigen Biologics, and here again, this is where the goal really matters. And then I wasn't sure when whether I will be talking to prospective bio-entrepreneurs or scientists who want to develop products to enhance a bio-entrepreneur company. So I'll try to cover a little bit of both, and many of the things are generic. And then how to approach, a little bit about how do we deal with partners as an entrepreneur or not. And then we have a breakaway session, of course, which I hope will be fun. And I have a slide which I call the grand finale, and that's how you build the long-term collaborations. And I'll do that just before the breakaway session. So my first point that I want to share with you is the opportunity is real. Bioentrepreneurship is a very important convergence and integration of science and business. And particularly biological science. And what makes bioentrepreneurship quite different from general entrepreneurship is the fact that it's almost centered in the academic environment. Most of the bioentrepreneurship initiatives actually is seeded in academic environments. And therefore, I think most of you on the call are in some kind of an academic or research position. It's a good place to start. But where you want to go, where you want to be the entrepreneur or collaborate with a company or prepare for a merger or an acquisition or prepare a service or a product that's of value to the sector, you have to do your homework well. And that's my first message to all of you. This doesn't come easy. You have to understand and learn the sector and understand what it takes to be successful. So this slide, I think this is for me the fundamentals of bioentrepreneurship. It's the journey beyond the known. And it's a little bit like Pioneer 10, and you guys can go and look up what is Pioneer 10. Launched in if I remember correctly, 1972. And it is still sending data back to Earth, and it's on a route to somewhere that no one knows, but being launched into the unknown with information back. And then these slides, all of them have a very special message, but it is basically what does it take to be a bio-entrepreneur. It takes something more than just the normal walk the road. And this picture, I loved it. I was looking for quite some time, and I had to dig it up again. Is what is the center of bio-entrepreneurship or even entrepreneurship? It's the curious brain. It's those of us who wants to know how, when, why, and is stimulated to explore beyond what is known, back to the unknown. But the essential element is it cannot only be the creative thinking. The positive mind in the green below is very important. The ease, the experience, excel, explore are so critical part of this being. I call the entrepreneur the humanized version of business. And of course, to build and to make and to learn and to look and to imagine, and very important, if you look at the pink part, is to fail and to create and to build. So this is a really capturing the fundamentals of bio-entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship for that matter. So let me share with you the journey of a proudly South African public-private biotech. And there's a lot of learning in the 9 years of timeline that I'm going to share with you. And part of it is also to apply for you to apply in how you engage with bio-entrepreneurial or young biotech startup companies. So this company based in the southern tip of Africa, in South Africa, is very unique in many instances. We operate in an ecosystem that has not fully developed end-to-end manufacturing capabilities, not for vaccines, not for diagnostics, yes, vaccines not, and therapeutic not. Therefore, we have a challenge to create end-to-end capabilities and to ensure that we translate research into products and take these to the clinic and into a healthcare system. So we were founded to localize production capacity for the tuberculosis vaccine. TB, South Africa is one of the high burden diseases. There is a vaccine which is more than 100 years old, protecting young children, but for latent disease and teenagers and older, TB is a major problem. And with antibiotic resistance now becoming an increasingly problem, multi-drug resistant tuberculosis is continued to be a problem. So there is a need for a vaccine, and there is a need for local production to ensure that we have security of supply. The second part of this company is in everything we did, it's about partnerships. From the early days when we were only 5 people, and we successfully did the technology transfer for formulation of adjuvants, creating the first adjuvant formulation center on the African continent. It was all about partnerships. It was about our ability to engage, our ability to build those valuable propositions and our ability to operate within relationships. And the partnerships we built was the part that really, really excelled this company. And as we progressed and in 2021, as a response to the pandemic, were empowered and appointed to be the mRNA technology transfer hub here in South Africa, developing mRNA technology, building the platforms and transfer it to low middle income countries where we now are able to capacitate and empower 15 companies in 15 countries, representing 3 billion people to be able to produce mRNA products, not only for pandemic readiness and pandemic preparedness, but also for public health purposes. So this company is for me, and Pia was also on this call, which you will meet later, captures all the essence of taking people, a staff from 4 people to 155 people in 3 years, to build the capacity, building the capabilities, building facilities, and share that with partners to ensure that we have access to this very critical future relevant technology. But so as an academic researcher, you have to know your value proposition. And across all these elements for successful ventures, whether you are intending to be a bio-entrepreneur one day, or whether you're intending to work for a biotechnology company or a pharmaceutical company, or whether you intend to develop products that will enhance the business of these entities, it is important that you understand what are the importance of innovation, where it starts, what drives it, and what is the difference between discovery and full innovation, from concept to a product. That's an innovation process. Biotechnology, understand the applications. Funding. Funding is a landscape on its own, and I have 2 or 3 slides that I want to share with you. Funding alone cannot do it, but without funding, we can do nothing. So it is a critical component of empowerment of bioentrepreneurship. Product development, turning ideas into real tangible products or services, is a skill, it's a process, and it's a very, very critical capability of a biotech company. And then regulatory. One of the biggest hurdles is regulatory pathways, and it's also one of the biggest cost elements of successful biotechnology companies. Important to understand the regulatory landscape and understand the hurdles and understand how to overcome these hurdles. Biotech is like the aviation industry and the nuclear industry, some of the highest regulated industries. And the reason being, it's about the safety of people, because the products we develop has to have a positive risk-benefit ratio. It has to be safe and effective. And then market entry. Understanding launches, understand what drives market factors, understand what is market failure, understand how to be sustainable in a market. These are critical elements of a successful biotechnology company, but also for those who want to serve those. And then, of course, the challenges, the value of death. So for product development in the biospace, whether it's for CAR-T, whether it's for cell or gene therapy, whether it's for vaccine, whether it's for mRNA-encoded therapeutic, the development cycle is long, it's expensive, it is challenging, and the value of death is when we have our ability to translate. And every company goes through that. Afrigen is going through it. We've gone through it with the previous product. We're going through it, and now again we go through it, and we need to understand to navigate those valleys of death. Let me talk a little bit about funding. And this is an interesting slide. And unfortunately, I couldn't get the 2024 update, but this I think gives the picture. On the top right or left, you'll see the size of the VC market. And this is not only for biotech. Well, this is only for biotech. I'm sorry. This is only for biotech. We're talking about up to $10 billion of venture funds being invested in biotech startups. So ventures means it's early funding, it's startup funding, and up to more than 100 deals in the year in 2021. What is very significant about this slide is the trend. It is interesting that during the pandemic and just before it, we've seen the biggest boom in biotech venture investments. That now is coming down, and we're moving into a funding winter, and I'll show you the next slide to demonstrate that. On the bottom part, I've listed some of the funders, and usually they go in these sequences. Now, for Europe and the US and very developed economies, these funding sources are all available. They're ready and they're very enabling. And there's a reason why the US is so phenomenally successful in venturing for multiple technologies. It's the availability of venture capital and the size of the market. But I've marked in yellow here governments, the importance of government grants to de-risk early development. That value of depth, when the risk of the product success is higher, failure is higher than success, those funding that de-risk is so critical. Now, on the right hand, I have shown the impact of the recent decisions on ODA funding and research funding cuts across the globe. And the interconnectedness with the VC market is very clear. And we've already seen in the last 2 months how startup companies in high-income countries like the US, I had discussions with the UK this morning, are in fact failing because that very fine balance and support of government support and funding to de-risk has been distorted. So the consequences of government's decisions on what they fund and what they don't fund and how they build the ecosystem is critical. And the rippling effect here, we will see the 24 data coming down. And then I have a note here at the bottom that 65% of startups fails within the first 10 years. And the number one reason why they fail is cash flow. One can access asset finance, but working capital is a challenge. However, that doesn't mean this is not worth it, and I'll show you later why it is. So this slide, I've gone back to Africa a little bit and looked at what is the VC landscape in Africa. And interesting, the trend followed the global trend on the left if you look at the bar chart, that in 21-22 we had the highest peak of available VC funding. And we're talking about 3.3 billion US dollars invested in the Africa continent for startups. And most of these are Series A, some Series B. So it means it's really pre-seed and seed funding. But if you look at the statistics on the right, none of it went into bio entrepreneurship. None of them went into manufacturing. None of these went into the high risk ventures, which is biotech. And this is a concern and a plea that comes now from the biotech community in Africa because of the importance of biotech in economic development and skills development and contribution to socio-economic development, that the risk profile of the investment into Africa is balanced more towards carrying some of the risk. But saying that, I also have to acknowledge that these companies have created thousands of jobs on the African continent and will fuel economic development like biotech startups are doing. So I want to share with you a case study. You can go Google Bob Langer, Dr. Robert Langer. He is currently with MIT. He has spent with David Koch Institute at MIT years back, and he's back with MIT. He's got one of the prestigious appointments in MIT, and he has created since 1993 more than 33 companies. We call him a serial bio-entrepreneur. And one of the companies that he has co-founded is Moderna. And I'm sure all of you on this call have heard about Moderna. So let's talk a little bit about mRNA. There's no way I can have a presentation without talking about mRNA. Andrea, I'm sure you all will forgive me. So let me share with you this beautiful history of a technology which is about to change the world and has during COVID made an enduring contribution. I think the first point that's very important in the learning is that RNA was discovered in 1960, and it was 60 years later only that through significant research, the best brains in the world, and more than $15 billion US dollars later, that a product based on mRNA technology or RNA technology was in fact licensed, and that was the COVID-19 vaccines from BioNTech and Moderna. So this was a long and winded road of scientific excellence, of overcoming significant challenges that will ensure that the modality brings safety and efficacy into the products that goes into the clinic. And that is the fundamentals of bioentrepreneurship challenges. And of course, you'll see on the right the Nobel Prize to Drew Weissman and Caroline Kapp for their significant work to stabilize the mRNA. But they were 2 of 1,000 of scientists that contributed. But in the bottom line, I want to share with you, so Moderna and BioNTech still leading the pack, with together spending $8 billion in R&D funding. This is mind-boggling numbers, and leading in the number of product development, more than 500 products, if you add all of it up in therapeutics and vaccine through these companies. So an mRNA success story. And if you go to the right, this also, the success of mRNA in 2020 with the fast development of a very safe and effective vaccine against COVID-19, spurred the development of multiple companies across the world. And here in the southern tip of Africa is a little African, but more than 260 mRNA companies was in fact created in the last 3 years, driving mRNA modality as a platform technology for impact on public health. So a beautiful story of Bob Langer with a vision and co-founders and creating a company like Moderna that is contributing and now fueling a whole wave of a new sector and a new industrial development globally. So I'm going to go to some more specific businesses, and the first thing I want to say to all of you, these are all generic, and you can package them in different sequences. You can take some of these out, but these are the fundamentals if you either want to pitch for funding, or you want to pitch for a project, or you want to build a partnership. And you're all going to play a little bit around pitches. A few comments: make it targeted, make it stick, make it wow. Know what you want to get out of it. Be confident. Do your homework. I'm not going to go through all of these different points, but successful fundraising, either for a product that you want to offer or for a company that you want to start, requires all these dimensions to come together in a well-targeted and well-oiled manner. Although entrepreneurship is such a wide and creative passion, it has, at the end of the day, it has to come home in a structured process. And building the bridges that last. Very important comment around relationships. No matter what you do, if you, and not even in business, in our own personal life, relationships and the values that drive those relationships are so critically important. So when you engage and when you build these partnerships, be clear about your value proposition, establish common goals. It's a win-win. It's not my goal only, it's our goals and our values. Be open and transparent. There is nothing more important for trust than openness and transparency and open communication. Building strong bonds takes time, so be patient. Flexible and adaptability provides a space to grow together. Be flexible, be adaptable, be accessible, and then deliver. At the end of the day, it is about bringing home what you promised to bring and deliver on the targets that you've set. And I thought, as inspiration, let me share with you a few of the quotes from some of the bio-entrepreneur or the entrepreneurial masters. I think the most visionary, and it takes us all back to our childhood, is Walt Disney. If you can dream it, you can do it. And I think even today, for any entrepreneur, for any young person, for anyone, even for me, I have to able to be dreaming it because then I can do it. Richard Branson, if somebody offers you an amazing opportunity, but you're not sure you can do it, say yes. You'll figure it out later. So this is very entrepreneurial. We can do it. And then when you think you can or think you can't, you're right. So this what this means, and this is such wise words from Henry Ford that gave us wheels. What you think is what you are. So if you think you can, you're right. If you think you can't, you will also not be able to. And then don't get hung up about money too much. The best way to make money in a business is not to think too much about making it. I think that's very important. Will Smith, build your life or someone else will hire you to build theirs. I think that is such an important objective for all of us. And then, of course, Colin Powell, success doesn't come from nothing. It's hard work. And now, over to our breakaway session leads. Let me do an introduction, and maybe Andrea, after this slide, they can just come up and say hi. I don't know, Blakely can get them. But what I want you guys to figure out for me, who's earth, who's wind, and who's fire?
Will we going to do a Q&A?
It's part of the competition.
Oh, okay.
So Christian and Thuria, Earth, Wind and Fire. And guys, you youngsters who doesn't know this band, go listen to Take It to the Sky. Thank you very much. I think that was my last slide. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Petra. That was very just inspiring. So do we want to have a quick introduction from Christian and just say who you are?
I thought the plan was to have a quick Q&A.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, we're just about to talk, and then we will introduce the breakaway, have a bit of a break, and then start, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I'm looking for hands being raised. Can you raise your hands?
Do you have any questions?
And if you can, you're keeping an eye on that?
I actually have a question, if that's okay. If
yes,
you don't mind me, sir. What would you say, Petro, are the sort of main differences between, I don't know whether you've operated in a high-income country, but the main differences between operating as you do in a lower middle-income country and a higher-income country, and not just obviously the resource issue, but the cultural approaches?
Likely the biggest difference is in a high-income country, you have a totally supporting ecosystem. It works. Everything is there. To give you, if you need an urgent raw material, a reagent, it's with you within 2 or 3 days. If you operate in a low middle income country like we are in Cape Town here, we wait weeks for urgent material to reach us. We're not operating in a supporting ecosystem that's complete. For example, if you look at Afrigen, we had to for complete resilience and self-sufficiency, we had to bring all analytics for our QC in-house. We have to ensure that we have end-to-end everything in-house and under our control, because we don't have the luxury of an ecosystem around us supporting us. And then the other part is the uncertainty sometimes around markets, the uncertainty around resources. So it is much tougher to build a biotech, sustainable biotech blockbuster company in a low middle income country. But the tides are changing. And I think the COVID pandemic started this wave of a realization that we have to decentralize biotech and manufacturing to ensure that we have a globe that can respond and can contribute to socioeconomic development. So I think it's changing, certainly for the Africa continent, but it is very different to operate. I've had the privilege to study in the US and spend lots of time there, and now compared to here, this is not for the faint-hearted.
And as we've got no country, just are there questions?
I haven't seen any hands yet. I was going to ask Petra, what was, oh, sorry, yeah, there you go. Tahina? Go ahead.
Wonderful presentation, Petro. I just have one question. So when you were starting up, day one.
Yes.
How did you realize that this is the niche that you want your company to develop? Because I think as new to this, it is very difficult to understand what, yes, I know the market wants TB vaccines, but then there are 100 people working on it. And then how do you develop that niche to support maybe testing TB vaccines?
This is a really, really important question, and you're going to take me to the fundamentals of Afrigen's history. It is quite interesting. The company was founded by a development finance institute, which is already interesting for founding a biotech high-risk company and a non-for-profit. So our two fathers, or our father and our mother, were unusual entities. They were not VC, they were not big pharma, they were not angels, they were two entities. And the non-for-profit entity, who was the leading founder and controlling founder of Afrigen, had a TB vaccine in development. And their passion was to see that manufactured in Africa. So the company was actually not started on the back of a business plan, which is bankable, with a clear return on investment and a profit motive. It was started with an access emotion in it. It's very interesting. And part of the team here is that we've inherited that passion for make local, empower our people, hire local, build the ecosystem. And we choose, even today, we choose vaccine candidates without running the numbers. We don't say, oh, which one is going to make us the most money? So we are not the Moderna. We are a bit of a different company. However, we are acutely aware of the fact that we have to be competitive, that our TB vaccine has to be safe and effective, it has to be affordable, it has to be accessible, and we have to have the funding to take it through the valley of death. So there's sometimes we're a bit schizophrenic also. We know we have to be financially viable. We know that we have to be successful, but we also have to compete on tech. So thank you for that question. It takes me back to great memories.
Excellent question. So Blakely has just said you can type your question in the chat, but also you can go to the reactions button to raise your hand. So do feel free. This is your opportunity to get that insight.
I have one sort of related question to the original one that I asked for Petro, if you don't mind, which is, how have you found it selling a South African vaccine company, but when you have to pitch to, I guess, quite powerful and influential people in the West or in higher income countries? How much of a challenge was that when you say, oh, we're based in South Africa?
It is a challenge, but it's how you package it, and I think we're going to go back to the pictures later. It's how you package it. What do we package here? This is South Africa. It has a rich investment in research and development. Yes, it's true. It's never taken IND to market, but it has a well-developed economy. It is a gateway to Africa. Africa is a continent that is a fast emerging economy. We are a high ESG company. We are pandemic preparedness and pandemic response. We are an entity that you could convert in 21 days to respond to a pandemic through clinical trial material, GMP manufacturing, or onboarding of quickly an mRNA vaccine. So we package it in terms of what are the funders looking for? They're looking for ESG companies. The pandemic preparedness is important because we don't want the hardcore funding that will just drive profits. We want the funding that continues with the culture of a company that has to be meet both those bottom lines. And of course, mRNA. The beauty of mRNA is the multi-productness of it. It's monoclonal antibodies, it's CAR-T, it's gene therapy, it has so many applications. And again, maybe one of the things that I can share with the team here, if you plan to be a bio-entrepreneur, go and look at the trends. It's important where you are, what will be absorbed, but now the leading trends is in AI, it is in cell and gene therapy, and of course, high value therapeutics. That's the basis of biology and chemistry that's coming together.
I think what was excellent about that answer, by the way, was that you've clearly prepared your pitch, which is what we're going to be asking our delegates here to do.
Yeah.
We actually have a question from Thuraya, who's struggling to use the reactions. But Thuraya, would you like to come on the camera?
Yes. Thank you, Blackley. Yes. So thank you, Pedro, for this excellent presentation and interesting one. So my question is, once we have good result as R&D for R&D, what is the first step to go for biomanufacturing? Is it the market, the study of the market? Is it to prepare a business plan, or to look for industrial and go for discussion? I think that it is important to have the steps, clear steps to go on. Thank you.
I think before you start the project, ideally, we should do an assessment. Is there an unmet need? Is there a crowded product portfolio? Do we have a value proposition? And again, it depends on where you are. If you're in a research institute, often the research is driven by curiosity. It's driven by where the funding is coming from, because that's the reality of life. But first step is there a need for my product? Secondly, at lab scale, the product is not a product. It is in discovery phase. It is then as soon as possible necessary to move it to translational, to assess whether this is the techno-economics. Can this be economically and affordably manufactured? Does it have a market value and market proposition? Who funds it? So, and who's my partner? Most universities are not geared and set up to take a product from concept and discovery through to a licensed product. So for the business model for a university scientist or a university department that now has a product that meets neutralizing some efficacy data, some safety data at laboratory scale, is to find a partnership as soon as possible. Either through a license or through a joint development agreement. And often these CRADAs, we call it collaborative research and development agreements, allow the university scientists to further develop their knowledge base, while the private entity drive the efficacy of a product that can be manufactured, GMP manufactured, and can be launched in the market as safe and effective and with a commercial value. So again, it depends on where you are. If you're in a biotech, if you're in big pharma, let me give you an example. If you're GlaxoSmithKline or one of the big pharmas, they will, at early assessment, they will scan the market and they will see the gaps. They will, at early assessment, assess the viability and the commercial value of a product. Otherwise, they won't continue with it. And part of the reason why we have so many neglected diseases and vaccine preventable diseases for which there are no vaccines is because for many of those, they're not a clear profit motive. Even for TB, this is a social good. For HIV vaccines, it's a social good. This is not a vaccine that you can charge at $300 a dose. This has to be below $10 a dose. So these decisions are dependent on where you are and what the goals of your company is. Am I helping you?
Yes, thank you very much, Petro.
Thank you, Petro. Sir Jan, would you like to ask your question?
He was there, I've seen him. He was on camera.
Yeah, I can see him. Would you like to go ahead? Can you? Sir Jan is asking, will it be sustainable, your company, and long-term survival if the company is based on a non-profit background? Interested to know if a company aims to earn by licensing its platform.
Yeah, so again, a very important question. It is absolute imperative for us that we are long-term sustainable, because we would lose everything we've built if we're not sustainable. So we have, the business model is, we have a platform, we have these facilities. We will develop, and we are developing our own assets. And the business model there is to license in territories where these products are needed and where partners would be interested in it, and to tech transfer to them. Of course, that is a revenue stream. But also, because we have the capability to produce about 50 million doses per annum, we will also, for selected products, also do production. In addition, we know that the infectious disease market is a difficult market. We know that mRNA inherently has a higher cost than a protein or an egg-based vaccine. So we have to be very careful on which products we then move through development with our own funding. Where we have grant funded, where there's an unmet need, like CEPI is funding us fully to develop a vaccine for Rift Valley fever because it's an important pandemic pathogen, and it is essential that there are stockpiles and readiness in case there's a transition to a pandemic for that. That's a different discussion than, for example, we developing a gonorrhea vaccine that has global relevance, that has to be cost effective, and the model is to license it. In addition, we have a subsidiary, Afrigen, which is Afrigen Compounding Solutions, that is a fast route to market for some of the products that we develop in the formulation space. So I think the best answer I can give you is we have a business plan. It banks. We know that we need blended funding in the first 10 to 15 to 20 years, like most other biotechs. Even Moderna was funded with large amounts of government public funding until 2020, until today even. So that fine balance is essential for us to have, but we have to have a commercial orientation and have a bankable business plan. So sustainability for Afrigen, I have no doubt. The product portfolio, the platform is very future relevant. The product portfolio, we've run the numbers, we've did the valuations. We know that 50% or even more of these products may fail, but we need one to go through. And we have a shareholder now that supports that and understands that biotech is sometimes hero or zero, and biotech requires long and patient investment.
Thank you very much. We actually have 4 questions. I'm not sure if we've got enough time for all of them.
It's entirely your and Petro's call, but we just about have time to go through those questions.
Okay, let's do that quickly then.
We might shorten the break a little bit, but yeah.
So we're looking for quick questions and fairly quick answers. So what makes biotech idea commercially viable, and what kind of business models work well in biotechnology? That's from Kiran Afsham.
Yeah, Kiran, again, good question. You have to know the trends, and you have to have a perspective of how big the market and the value is. So what makes a biotech idea commercially viable is if it can be translated into a product, if that product has or a service, that product or service has a commercial value, and somebody is prepared to fund it. You know, the irony sits that whatever you develop, if nobody wants to pay for it, you're lost. What kind of business models work well in biotech? Startups are higher risk in low middle income countries, and high income countries less risk. A business model to license. Although we are a startup and we're a biotech company, our first and foremost business model is to license our assets to partners that can do scale manufacturing, that can invest in the launch of these products, that can invest in the regulatory licensing of these products, and can sustain the market. So we will license on. Another model is if you have a service and you have a knowledge base, it's a CDMO, that you do contract development and manufacturing. So you have a knowledge base, you have the systems in place, you understand intellectual property, you can manage pre-competitiveness and competitiveness, and you actually develop products for a third party who owns the product, but they pay you fully for that. And there's a lot of CDMOs, particularly in Africa, there's none, but in Europe, in the US, Korea, in developing countries, there are many of these, and they are highly specialized and they're highly successful. So there are multiple models of commercializing your products. or your knowledge base.
So Adrian Wildfire is asking us, so he's looking for a company that would allow him to identify, he's already got, he wants to repurpose therapies for areas of unmet need. How does he go about getting funding to test those products in animal models to secure a patent and onwards to clinical trials? So I think what you were just talking about might be the...
Yeah. So Adrian, it is tough. I'm not sure where you're based and you know, if you're working for a research institute, but there are a year ago, there were many more. Now there's very limited grant funding to de-risk, because that phase, what you're talking about here, which is your preclinical and phase 1, that's your valley of death. That's where you have a product and it has promise, but it's not an asset yet. So VCs will not pick it up and big pharma will not in-license it because it's slightly too early. So it's this valley of death where we need the de-risk funding. So depending on what dengue is a CEPI, it's a CEPI priority. RSV is a global priority, a very, very crowded landscape. But this, if your target product profile is a niche that speaks to an unmet need, it can really, really work. EDCTP takes from phase 1. There's the right foundation in Korea. There's the Japanese Health Investment Technology Fund. There is the Gates Foundation. There's the Wellcome Trust. There are quite a number of funders that will look at these proposals, but they'll have to be packaged. So you know, I'm happy to have an offline and share some of that with you. But funding is now tough after the ODA and the cut in research grants all over the world, and the concern of governments that there will not be sufficient liquidity for healthcare even. So it's a tough time to get funding.
So Jonathan asks, what insights can you give startup in lower middle income countries without well-developed financial markets and where the human resources are not as developed as in South Africa?
So that is, we have to get that right. That is the biggest challenge, Jonathan, but we have to get it right. So start small, dream big, start small, hire the best, scale wisely. But get at least Series A's, early seed funding, and there are more and more coming into Africa. You've seen that graph. We have to convince the VCs to also invest in a little bit of higher risk entities. And then you have to train the skill. You hire, you know, very wisely, and then you train. If you look at the African example, we've gone from like 18, actually 12, 18, and now 153 people. But the average age of the company is 34. What does it tell you? It tells you it's an inexperienced company. It is, well, 47% have masters or PhDs or honors degrees. 87% have tertiary qualifications. But the average age is 34. That it means we have highly qualified people, but inexperienced. How do you build experience? You make mistakes, you learn, you give them room to make mistakes, but that costs money. So we would not have been able to pivot and be where we are now if it wasn't for significant funding put into this company to create these capabilities. So you need to have that lucky break. We call it, you have to have the lucky break. And us, the African today is a child of the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's be honest about that. So you must look for that break, and I wish I could help.
Thank you. And we've got a question from Agnes, who's asking about the relative costs of licensing and patenting. And she's not sure. I think if she says you can patent to a certain period and then the product will be open for pirate drug vaccine developers. Is that true? And is there a downside to patenting, I suppose? Or is it the best thing to do?
Yes, I think Validate must do a full seminar on intellectual property.
Yeah, no,
how you manage, how you patent. So you get it roughly a 20-year protection preferential period for a patent, but that 20 years starts ticking when you file the first provisional patent, when you first file. So what we've done is we have delayed patenting strategies. We file as late as possible so that we further advance before the 20-year clock start ticking. The risk of that is if you have any prior art, if you perhaps accidentally present the results or somebody, or it leaks out, then you lose everything. So patenting is a highly specialized, complex field, and it is very expensive. So there are other ways to protect your intellectual property, but a patent is an asset. So it adds to the value of your company. So when somebody comes to buy your company or put money into the company, they will look at the patent. So if you have none and you have know-how or trade secrets that you protect, that's also valuable, but it's not as valuable as patents. So it's a whole field. And Andrea and Sam on the call, I think it would be a fantastic webinar to do
yeah.
a IP.
I think that's a good idea. It's something you can only learn by, like you say, by failing if you don't have a discussion. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Could
the
be
last
a good
question.
how-to workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last question is, apart from vaccines, what else can we look at? POCTs from Mavis. Does everybody know what a POCT is?
Proof of concept
Proof of
trials, is that?
trial.
Is that it, Mavis? Is that what proof of concept? Mavis, how can you speak? Can you tell us what is your, it's proof of concept trials, or is it? So Mavis, let me answer you. Vaccines are the most difficult, and let's be honest about that. The development time, even with mRNA, are close to 10 years. The risk-benefit ratios must be very carefully assessed. There's enormous regulatory oversight to ensure that safety and efficacy is not compromised. But if you have mRNA, the first CAR-T mRNA products are registered. It's for sickle cell anemia. Drew Weissman registered it. The first monoclonal antibodies from mRNA is starting to come through and to be tested. And of course, the therapeutics, that's where Moderna and BioNTech just leads the world. Most of their products is in the oncology, metabolic disorders, chronic diseases and diseases, inherited genetic diseases field. And those are fast track. They move much faster. You encode the mRNA, you use platform technology and develop. So I think, and then of course, cell and gene therapy. I mean, if you look today at where are the biggest acquisitions and the biggest investments are going into, it goes into cell and gene therapy combined with AI, discovery AI.
Thank you so much, Petro. We've got a few more questions there, and hopefully we might be able to pass them on to you if that's possible, Blakely, for answer. I think at the moment, are we going to finish our recording, Blakely?
Yes. So my suggestion is we just thank Petro just for the sake of the people who are watching the recording, and then I'll stop the recording, and then we can move on to the
Thank you very much, Petro. That's been fantastic, and lots of rounds of applause. I can see that from everybody.